The stage lit up with John Oliver's signature grin, and the crowd instantly sensed he was about to sink his teeth into something bigger than just the weekly news cycle. He sat at the desk, leaned forward, and with a pause that stretched just long enough to make the audience lean in, he dropped it. So, Jimmy Kimmel is back. Yes, the man was suspended indefinitely. Which, as it turns out, in television language means about as long as you wait for your Amazon package to arrive. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Oliver smirked, knowing he had them. He tilted his head, pretending to puzzle over the word indefinite. What a word. When I hear indefinite, I picture years, decades, Jimmy wandering the desert like Moses, but with a cue card. Not 6 days. 6 days, that's not indefinite, that's a bloody bank holiday. That's the same length of time most people wait for their laundry to pile up before they finally wash it, the audience howled, clapping, and Oliver pressed on, his voice rising. Let's be honest here. ABC tried to make this suspension sound like some moral reckoning. They wanted it to look noble, like, we take our late-night hosts seriously. We are protecting standards. But what actually happened? 6 days of reruns, 6 days of affiliates throwing tantrums, 6 days of corporate panic attacks. Then, poof, he's back on Tuesday. That's not a suspension. That's a spa retreat, the audience roared. Oliver leaned back in his chair, adjusted his glasses dramatically, and kept going. And while all of this was happening, the drama was wild. Affiliates like Nexstar and Sinclair announced they wouldn't even air his show anymore. Imagine that. ABC's biggest late-night program, and the local stations are like, yeah, no thanks. We'll just air Wheel of Fortune reruns instead. That is brutal. That's like telling someone, we don't need your new jokes. We've got vowels to sell. The laughter rolled, and Oliver snapped back upright, pacing the desk with his hand, and you know what makes this even more ridiculous? The timing. ABC said Jimmy's remarks were ill-timed, which is corporate code for, we didn't like the joke because the advertisers didn't like the joke. But if the problem was timing, why did the timing suddenly fix itself in less than a week? Did the planets align? Did Mercury stop retrograding? Did Jimmy complete some magical side quest where he apologized to a room of Disney executives and promised to make only jokes about avocado toast from now on? The audience burst into applause, cheering as Oliver flung his arms wide. Because let's be clear, this wasn't about timing. This was about panic. ABC saw affiliates screaming, Twitter trending, advertisers sweating, and thought, quick, pull him off! And then, when the dust settled, they realized, wait. We actually need Jimmy to keep the lights on. So back he goes. 6 days later. It's the corporate equivalent of sending your kid to their room and then letting them out 10 minutes later because dinner's ready. The crowd roared so loudly that Oliver had to pause, grinning as the applause washed over him. He leaned back in with a quieter, slyer tone, and then came the so-called reinstatement. ABC proudly announced he would return on September 23rd after, quote, thoughtful conversations. Thoughtful conversations? Please, that's not thoughtful. That's code for, we sat Jimmy down, showed him his contract, and reminded him how many zeros are in it. And then Jimmy nodded while eating a granola bar. That's not thoughtful. That's Tuesday. The audience howled again, clapping, stomping their feet. Oliver rolled his eyes dramatically, raising his voice again. And here's where it gets even better. Jimmy may be back, yes, but not everywhere. No. Sinclair and Nexstar, two of the biggest affiliate groups in the country, said they're still not airing him. Which means, in large parts of America, Jimmy is technically on air. But only if your local station feels like it. He's like Schrodinger's talk show host, simultaneously alive and canceled, depending on what zip code you live in. You turn on the TV in one city and see Jimmy making jokes. Turn it on in another, and it's a cooking show about casseroles. He's there and not there at the same time. That is humiliating. The laughter was deafening, the audience clapping so hard some stood up. Oliver leaned forward, tapping his desk like he was hammering the point home. Think about that. ABC reinstates Jimmy, makes a whole press release about his triumphant return, and then half the country can't even watch it. That's not a comeback. That's a witness protection program. Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air, but only if you live in a very specific, carefully chosen region of the United States. Everywhere else? He's still missing, like the world's least interesting mystery novel. The room was howling now, laughter rolling over the set. Oliver grinned, tilted his head, and delivered the kicker to the section. Imagine being Jimmy right now. You've been yanked off air for 6 days, humiliated in headlines, roasted online, reinstated with caveats, and now your show is basically playing hide-and-seek with America. At this point, Jimmy's return tour has less reach than my aunt's Facebook livestream of her cat. The audience screamed with laughter, clapping wildly. Oliver let it linger, smirk widening as he leaned back in his chair. His eyes gleamed as if to say, "And I'm not done yet." The audience was still howling from the earlier roast when John Oliver leaned back in his chair, tugged at his jacket, and with that cheeky smile asked, "So what happens now? What's Jimmy going to do on his first night back?" He paused, let the tension hang, then delivered it with his trademark bite. Because, let's be honest, the world isn't tuning in to see his first joke. No, everyone is tuning in to see whether Jimmy Kimmel apologizes, doubles down, or just pretends the whole thing was a bad dream. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past him to walk out with a big sign that says, "Nothing happened, don't ask." The crowd burst out laughing, and Oliver pounced, leaning forward dramatically. Think about it. The entire industry has been buzzing for a week, affiliates refusing to air him, Disney executives pacing their offices like stressed-out meerkats, social media foaming at the mouth, and Jimmy walks back into the studio on Tuesday night. What's he going to say? Is it going to be an apology? Is it going to be an excuse? Or is it just going to be 15 minutes of him holding a mug and pretending he was on vacation? The audience howled. Oliver tilted his head, squinted, and imitated Kimmel's possible opener. "Hey guys, missed me? I was just gone for a few days. Nothing major, just some thoughtful conversations with my bosses." Oliver's voice dropped into a mock corporate whisper. "They told me to be careful with my words. And I told them, sure thing, right after I cashed the check." The crowd roared, applause shaking the room. Oliver pounded the desk. And here's the problem. No matter what Jimmy says, it won't be enough for someone. If he apologizes, half the audience will say, "Too little, too late." If he doesn't apologize, the affiliates who yanked him will say, "See? He hasn't learned." And if he just avoids the subject completely, the internet will drag him for acting like nothing happened. He's walking into a lose-lose monologue. The man is literally about to play the most high-stakes game of Would You Rather in late-night history. The crowd cheered, laughing so hard Oliver had to pause. He grinned, enjoying the noise, then leaned in again. And let's not forget, the affiliates are watching too. Sinclair, Nexstar, they've got the show under a microscope. They're basically sitting there with popcorn waiting to see if Jimmy slips again. That first monologue isn't comedy. It's a parole hearing. He doesn't get to crack a joke. He's got to convince a bunch of boardrooms in Texas and Ohio that he's trustworthy enough to be shown at 11:35 p.m. The audience howled, clapping wildly. Oliver threw up his hands. "That's insane!" A late-night monologue shouldn't feel like a hostage negotiation. Yet here we are. The fate of a multi-million-dollar TV show rests on whether Jimmy Kimmel makes it through 10 minutes of jokes without upsetting anyone. "This isn't television anymore. This is defusing a bomb with a laugh track," the crowd roared, some doubling over in their seats. Oliver's voice softened into mock sympathy. "And poor Jimmy, the guy can't win." If he laughs too much, people say he isn't taking it seriously. If he looks too serious, people say he's lost his comedy edge. If he even mentions the word suspension, half the country will start drafting angry tweets in real time. Honestly, at this point, the safest thing for Jimmy to do in his opening monologue is to just sit in silence for 15 minutes while holding up a sign that says, "Please don't cancel me again." The audience screamed with laughter, clapping as Oliver leaned back, grinning ear to ear. Then he straightened, his tone sharpening. "Now let's talk about the damage. Because make no mistake, this whole fiasco cost Jimmy, not just the humiliation of being yanked off the air, but the branding, the reputation, the whole aura of stability around his show. For years, Jimmy Kimmel Live was this late-night staple. You knew what you were going to get. Monologues, celebrity interviews, occasional viral sketches. But now, that brand has cracks. Cracks so big even an ABC intern can see them from space. The crowd chuckled, and Oliver pressed on. Advertisers hate this kind of instability. They want safe, predictable shows. They want the host they're sponsoring to be talking about TikTok dances or football bloopers, not to be the subject of headlines that read, "Suspended indefinitely." That's not comforting to toothpaste brands. That's terrifying. Nothing makes Colgate panic faster than seeing the words, "late-night scandal" in Variety. The audience laughed, Oliver pounding the desk for effect. And the affiliates? They've tasted blood. They've realized they can preempt Jimmy whenever they want. That's power. That's leverage. That means the next time Jimmy even sneezes in a way they don't like, they'll be ready to swap his show out for reruns of Judge Judy. And let's be honest, some affiliates would love an excuse to air Judge Judy at midnight. She's cheaper, she yells at people, and she's never suspended. The crowd howled, clapping. Oliver grinned, pausing for effect, then leaned in again. And here's the cruel irony. Jimmy's entire career has been built on making fun of other people when they mess up. Athletes, celebrities, random people on the street. That's the job of a late-night host. You roast, you jab, you point out the absurdity. But now he's the absurdity. He's the punchline. And once you become the punchline, the power shifts. You don't get to laugh at others in the same way when everyone's laughing at you. That's not the host's chair anymore. That's the dunce corner, the audience erupted, some doubling over in laughter. Oliver smirked, let the reaction roll, then shifted again. And it's not just the audience that's waiting. It's the staff, the writers, the producers. Imagine being on Jimmy's writing team right now. They've spent the last week crafting jokes, editing scripts, adjusting tone. And you know what their big challenge is? Not being funny, they can do that. Their big challenge is surviving the network's panic attacks. Disney is probably emailing them every half hour. Please, no risky jokes. Please, no edgy humor. Please, just make Jimmy talk about pumpkin spice lattes for the whole monologue. The room roared, applause echoing. Oliver pounded the desk, laughing himself. That's what it's come to. The man who once roasted Matt Damon every single night may now be reduced to talking about seasonal coffee drinks. That's the legacy of this suspension. Not the controversy, not the reinstatement, but the fact that his comedy is now being reviewed by Disney lawyers with highlighters. Jimmy doesn't have a monologue anymore. He has a compliance checklist. The audience howled, clapping and stomping their feet. Oliver leaned forward, eyes gleaming. And the viewers. Oh, the viewers. They're tuning in with expectations sky high. They don't want jokes about celebrities. They don't want funny sketches. They want fireworks. They want Jimmy to address the elephant in the room. But here's the trick. No matter what he does, someone will walk away disappointed. If he apologizes, critics will say it wasn't sincere. If he laughs it off, people will say he's arrogant. If he tries to do a heartfelt speech, Twitter will cut it into memes by morning. Jimmy can't win this monologue. He's in a comedy trap where every door leads to more chaos. The crowd roared, clapping, some shouting, "Yes!" Oliver grinned, raised his eyebrows, and gestured with his hands as if summing it all up. But not finishing it. Just setting the stage for more. Right now, Jimmy's return isn't just another Tuesday night. It's the most anticipated late-night monologue of the year. And everyone, Disney, affiliates, advertisers, fans, haters, is sitting there with popcorn waiting to see if he crashes the car or drives it straight. And let's be honest, with Jimmy's track record, there's a good chance he does both at the same time. The audience howled, stomping and cheering. Oliver leaned back, smirk widening as if to say, "And we're only getting started." The crowd was still buzzing, laughter from the last bit echoing, when John Oliver leaned back, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and raised one eyebrow like a man about to pull out receipts. "And here's the other thing," he began, milking the silence before continuing. Jimmy still desperately wants to be known as the guy of late-night television. The cultural commentator, the truth-teller, the king of monologues. But right now, he's clinging to that identity the way a toddler clings to a balloon they let go of in a grocery store. Everyone can see it floating away. Jimmy's just the last one refusing to admit it's gone. The audience exploded in laughter, and Oliver smirked, letting them clap. He sat forward again. Think about it. For years, Jimmy made a brand out of being untouchable. He could roast celebrities, athletes, other networks, you name it. He had this reputation as the guy who could say what everyone else was thinking. But this suspension, this return, it shattered that illusion. Suddenly, Jimmy's not untouchable. He's touchable, very touchable, so touchable that ABC literally touched him right off the air for a week, and once you lose that aura, you don't get it back. The crowd howled, some stomping their feet. Oliver pressed on, voice rising, and of course, the internet noticed. Oh, did they notice? Because while Jimmy was suspended, his name was everywhere, trending hashtags, memes, think pieces, podcast segments, and none of it was flattering. People were replaying the clips, mocking the network, making parodies. Jimmy Kimmel went from being the guy making the jokes to being the joke itself. And once the internet turns you into a meme, you're done. That's it. You can't beat the meme. Ask any politician, ask any celebrity. Once you're a TikTok sound effect, your career is officially in the hands of teenagers with editing apps. The crowd roared, applause echoing. Oliver pounded the desk with mock seriousness. And Jimmy knows this. You can see it in his face. When he walks back onto that stage, you can tell he's thinking, how many jokes will I make tonight before someone turns it into a GIF with clown music? That's the level of paranoia he's dealing with. And honestly, fair, because his suspension was 6 days, but the memes will live forever. The internet is undefeated. And Jimmy just gave them unlimited material. The audience screamed with laughter, clapping and cheering. Oliver smirked, then shifted tone, becoming mock serious again. And then, of course, there are the advertisers. The people who actually fund the show. These are the folks who want stability. They don't want drama. They want their commercials sandwiched between safe, palatable jokes about sports and movie stars. And now, they're stuck with Jimmy Kimmel, the human controversy piñata. Do you really think toothpaste brands want to follow a monologue that almost got the show yanked off air? No, they want puppies. They want dancing families. They do not want Jimmy saying, "Welcome back, folks," while their ad runs 2 minutes later. That is not synergy. That is sabotage. The audience howled again, clapping so loudly Oliver had to pause, grinning. And this is where it gets worse. Because affiliates, advertisers, and fans are now picking and choosing how to treat Jimmy. Selective treatment. Some markets air him, others don't. Some advertisers stick around, others run for the hills. Some fans defend him, others mock him. He's become television's cafeteria tray. Everyone's just picking off the bits they like and leaving the rest to rot. The crowd roared, and Oliver raised his hands. It's the most humiliating thing that can happen to a host. He's not fully cancelled. He's not fully supported. He's just existing in this weird half-life where everyone has an opinion, but no one really wants to own him. He's basically the fruitcake of late-night television. Nobody asked for him, nobody wants him, but he just keeps showing up at the table anyway. The audience screamed, laughter rolling like thunder. Oliver leaned forward, eyes gleaming, and let's talk about the audience at home. Because they're not stupid. They've seen the headlines. They know Jimmy was suspended, they know some affiliates won't air him, they know advertisers are nervous. So when they tune in now, they're not tuning in for comedy. They're tuning in like it's a live stunt. Like, will he make it through the monologue without blowing it again? Jimmy Kimmel has become appointment television, not because of the jokes, but because people want to see if he'll crash and burn. That's not late-night entertainment. That's NASCAR with a laugh track. The room howled, clapping, some audience members doubling over in their seats. Oliver pounded the desk, his voice rising higher. And here's the sad truth. This isn't just about Jimmy. This says something about late-night TV as a whole. The entire genre is built on the idea that the host controls the room. They have the mic, they have the jokes, they decide who gets roasted. But when the network pulls you off air, when affiliates refuse to air your show, when advertisers get skittish, you don't control anything anymore. The illusion is shattered. The host isn't the one in power, the corporations are. And once the audience realizes that, the mystique of late night collapses. You're not a bold truth teller. You're just another employee who can be suspended like anyone else. The audience clapped loudly, a mix of laughter and applause. Oliver let it hang, eyes narrowing, smirk creeping across his face. And Jimmy's problem now is that everyone knows it. He can't pretend he's untouchable anymore. He can't act like he's above it all. He's just another cog in the Disney machine, another name on the affiliate schedule, another host walking on eggshells. And the second he forgets that, the second he gets too comfortable, ABC will remind him again with another indefinite suspension that lasts exactly as long as a long weekend. The crowd erupted, clapping and roaring with laughter, some shouting, "Yes!" from the audience. Oliver leaned back, smiling wickedly, letting the laughter roll over the studio, and then, with that familiar gleam in his eye, he leaned forward again, tapping his desk, smirk widening as if to say, "And we're still not finished."